welcome to the latest episode of All Mixed Up. I'm Mark Simmons, Chief Strategist for Mixed Digital.
I'm Steph.
And today we're going to talk about getting social. We just experienced a fire drill in the office, and we had to vacate the premises.
Yes, run away, run away.
So, it's funny that happened today as we were planning on, doing the broadcast, and fire drills happen in digital marketing, fire drills happen in social media. You gotta, the S hits the fan and you've got to react. And you've got to get into crisis management mode and repair things. So It's funny that, we had to do the same thing today.
Yeah, I mean, when things happen, you just got to be right on top of it. And if you don't handle that in real time, it just looks really bad for, your brand. It's the kind of thing where, someone has a question or someone starts complaining or, it's whenever you have something that's perceived as a negative, you can always turn it into a positive. So, we're sitting here and we're hearing the fire drill and we're like, oh no, what are we going to do? And then we're talking about it and we're like, that's something that happens in social media. And,
like when a passenger gets dragged off an airplane?
Yeah. Exactly.
I'd say that had a social media fallout, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just the kind of thing where you gotta react right away when things happen. And
it's changed the game. Before social media, news got out over traditional media, and then you have public relations that would be able to spin it and manage it and rebuild the reputation and handle this type of situation. But now with social media, everyone can post anything at any time and anywhere. And how do you control the message, right? As a brand, how do you control the message?
Yeah. Well, I mean, perfect example was, and I'm going to talk about a personal experience that I had. And there was this particular airline, and, it was around the holidays, and I'm actually from New York, and I'm about to fly home for Christmas, and I'm sitting in the airport, and my flight's delayed an hour, and then it's delayed 4 hours, and then it's delayed 10 hours, and now I'm taking to Twitter, and I'm going, guys, this is not okay. This really isn't okay. You can't even change my flight and put me on another one. And I sent about 5 tweets, and I wasn't the only one, clearly, and they didn't get back to me. And then finally they just write, we're really sorry and we're doing the best we can. And I'm disgruntled and I'm saying I'm never going to fly with you again. You don't take care of us. And it's the kind of thing where maybe you're going to lose money that way, but your customer service experience is so important, because in the long run you're going to lose people. You're going to lose that loyalty. So it's the longer I had to wait for that response, the more angry I got. And now I'm not only talking to or tweeting and reaching out to this airline, but now I found someone else in the airport who is just as angry, and now we're tweeting back and forth to each other, and now we're being social and we're complaining about this horrible experience. And case in point, it's this opportunity that can turn things into a positive. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to get out of hand. And, one of the things I wanted to point out is that on social media, the last thing you want to do is start arguing with somebody. Because people, if they want to complain, they're going to complain.
Right.
And you always want to kind of take the conversation offline, and then you can make the experience more personal. When you have that front-facing, we are this corporate entity, and this is how we're going to handle it. That's not what social media is about. It's about making that human connection, and that's the kind of thing that people want to have.
That's a good point. That's a good point to bring up, because so often the clients that we talk to and the prospects that we talk to think about social media only in the vein of marketing, pushing their message out, right, getting that additional reach, but they don't think about it in terms of customer service. And a lot of the larger companies will have 2 handles, like for Twitter specifically. They'll have their brand centric, where they're promoting their products and their company, and then they'll have their customer service handle where they're dealing with these issues that come up, so that they can take that personal touch. And they get it, right? They get that there's a distinction between marketing and service, and so they've handled that. You'll sometimes see on Facebook the post by visitors, and they'll ask questions. They'll have customer service issues, and they'll use Facebook Messenger within the page to get back in touch with them. But it's a lot more clear cut when they do is 2 handles on Twitter or 2 handles on Instagram or something like that. But
yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And one of the analogies I like to kind of think of with social media, and a lot of us kind of talk about this, is you never want to go to a party and just talk about yourself, or you need to have that customer service experience where you're reaching out to other people at this party, you're talking to them, and that's really the marketing side. Is you're kind of you're talking about yourself and you're asking what people want from you, but then there's also the other side where you've got that host who's running a million miles an hour, and there's a spill and someone just got this huge stain on the carpet, and they go, hey, can you take care of that? And you can't spread yourself too thin. You have to have 2 different sides of it.
right.
So having that customer service side kind of handles those. They kind of handle those fire drills, if you will.
Back to the fire drills.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think that's almost a good segue to talk about the marketing aspect of social media, and back to what you were saying, not spreading yourself too thin and making sure that you're not always talking about yourself. So it's kind of, when we develop our social media strategy, we look at it in terms of the types of content that we're posting and how do we categorize that. So we have content that's branded, that's talking about the company itself. We have content that talks about the services that the company provides. And then we have content that's kind of almost educational, that's teaching something or giving advice or giving useful information that our customers or potential customers, or our clients' customers or potential customers, can use without having to pay for, right? Just completely free. And what that does is, it from a strategic standpoint, it kind of sets up the prospective customer or client to be more trusting of the brand. They give me all this information, so when you finally send a promotional message, they're more receptive to it because you've built up this familiarity with the brand. Many marketers, many social media marketers use that approach, and a famous social media marketer who we won't name wrote a book about it, right, and talks about those strategies. But it makes sense. You provide that value, build that relationship, so when you come in there with the ask, it's not coming out of left field, and they don't feel like they're always being marketed to, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add to that?
Let me see here. I think.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I think what you're getting at is that you always want to add value to your audience, and that's, what are they talking about? And you never want to just talk about your services, because it's kind of like, hey, we do this, but do you really know what you're talking about? And one of the ways you do that is you find what people are talking about and what's relevant and current. So, getting kicked off of an airplane with leggings on, that's something people are talking about.
Right.
And maybe you're going to jump into that conversation because people have emotion with that. But then, it's the kind of thing where if you're not current about these things, then you just don't know. You don't know what people want to learn. You don't know what they want to talk about.
All right. So here's a great example.
Right,
because you talk about the leggings, right?
Here we go.
So if I'm LuLaRoe, and if you're familiar with LuLaRoe, very popular leggings brand, all right? So if I see that story about getting kicked off a plane for wearing leggings, then I'm going to want to tweet or message out, well, at least look fantastic when you're getting kicked off the plane. Get yourself some LuLaRoes.
Really, wear a skirt. Just wear a skirt. It's simple. Pull your shirt down.
Or wear a skirt, but LuLaRoe does make skirts, so that is one way that you can do it. But you get the point. It's just kind of, if you're going to insert yourself into this popular viral conversation, right? That's inherently negative, and you can find some way to add levity, and that's a good approach. That's a good approach to try and get yourself in the stream without being overly promotional. I don't know. It's a challenge.
Yeah, but it's the kind of thing where it's just the more relevant you are and people are already talking about it and you jump in. I mean, you can say it's a fire drill and you have to react right away, but if you're not knowing people are talking about it and jumping in, it's a huge opportunity you're missing. One of the ways that we do that is when we're at trade shows or conferences, we're using a hashtag that people are using there in real time. If you're not in that conversation, then you're a wallflower, and you're not going to get any attention there. And that just to add to that, it's one of the reasons that social media and hiring social media managers is just so important, is because you are so busy running a business, or you're doing your everyday job, and that might not be your first priority, and you might not be looking at your social media activity every second of the day like we are.
Right.
But I mean, if you get a message and it's like, hey, this is messed up, and you don't answer right away, I mean, I might not fly your airline again. So I'm just saying. I mean,
and that varies based on the size of the company. For the smaller companies where they're not being talked about a ton across social media, you have to do some digging to find some information to see what customer sentiment is like. But you can still find that information out there in a number of places. But when you've got a big, huge brand that people are, they're getting 1,000 tweets about them a day, or 500 Facebook messages sent to them a day, you've got tons of data, right? You've got tons of information to look through, and you can start to determine, well, what problems are their customers having? What are their customers raving about? And where do you see opportunities to fix things? So then you can start changing your content strategy to address those problems, to highlight the ravings, and to offer up these ideas based on the opportunities that you've discovered are available. So, we call it social media listening. You're just paying attention to understand what customer sentiment is. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? What are people talking about? What are they discussing? We're now in an age where social media is so prevalent to the decisions we make as consumers. Facebook introduced recommendations recently, where whenever you type out a Facebook post and you include the word recommendations in there, it changes the format of the post. You can add in a location, and it highlights it to let it know that you're looking for a recommendation. So recently I put out a post where it said, can someone recommend me a garage door specialist? Our garage door broke and we needed a repairman. And so we put it out there, and I got about 10 responses. I went through and identified who I wanted to work with, but it was a very useful process to me. Facebook made it happen, and it happened on social media. I didn't go to the yellow pages. I didn't do a Google search for garage door specialist. No, I went on my Facebook page and asked people
and you have
to
a question for you. The question is, did you wind up working with one of those companies that responded to you? You did. And what was it about that response that made you want to use them?
Well, it was one of the companies that was recommended to me, and I made the phone call, and I just like what they had to say. But here's the thing. So out of the 10 responses that I got, 10 or so responses I got, about half of them were for the same company.
Yeah.
So when you start to see that pattern emerge, that this must be a good company because half of the people are recommending them, that's an easy decision. So I talked to them, and as long as it sounded
yeah, and there's a reason for that. It's that brand loyalty. It's having good customer service. It gets the word out, and that's what you really want. Is what the best way to get new customers in the door or calling in is having that presence, having that connection. Because when you have people recommending services or a company to you, you're more likely to take the advice of people you trust. Because people don't always trust companies. They just don't always. So brand loyalty is just so important. And having a good presence on social is huge.
So let's talk about that. Okay. Because we want to try and provide value to the audience that's watching. We appreciate that you're watching. We thank you for that.
Yes,
definitely
we love you
share
all.
this far and wide. All right. Okay. So back to the plan. Promotion segment over. That was our little commercial. Okay. So how do you create trust? How do you create trust using social media?
creating trust in social media. I think, obviously we talked a lot about customer service. We talk a lot about, simple things like, you go to a store and there's a good return policy. It's, it's treating them well, but it's also consistency. So we talked about adding value and how do you add value, sticking with hashtags that are really relevant, showing that you know what you're talking about. Typos all over your posts, that's just kind of, do I really trust that they know what they're doing?
So a lot of it is the content. A lot of it is the content and the messaging.
Yeah, a lot of it is content, but it's the quality of the product. I mean, obviously products and services want to speak for themselves, but as far as loyalty goes, having that regular rapport with your audience is just so important. And one of the things too is how responsive you are. If I ask a question and you answer, you're a resource to me. You're valuable to me.
Right.
And if you're not answering my questions, then I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
You need to get that question answered.
Yeah. I mean, now.
I think one of the ways, to add to what you've said, one of the ways that you can create that trust with a brand is to be personable. And one of the things I like to tell clients to do, or like to suggest as part of strategy, is to highlight the people that work for them, to highlight the people that make the company run. And that's something that we recently did with one of our clients when we did a photo shoot. Right, so we took profile pictures of the people that work for the company in different capacities, and we're going to tell their stories on social media, because not only do I as a consumer and most people as a consumer want to know that the company that I'm about to do business with is legitimate, stable, has a great product or service, but I also want to know that they treat their employees fairly. That they care, right? That they care about the people that work for them, and they care about what other people think. So highlighting the people that work for them, telling these stories, sharing these stories, I think is a great way to build that trust and familiarity with the brand. Because otherwise, if you're always talking about brand, product, you come off as me versus the company. You come off, there's a distance that's created, and you're just looking at them as another choice in a commodity environment where you have other choices and you can go someplace else. Why do people shop at Lowe's versus Home Depot? I don't know the answer to that, but it lies in loyalty and the way that they communicate with their customers, and the programs that they have to stay in touch, and things like the My Lowe's card that keeps track of their purchases and has an app that you can use to remember what you purchased and when you need things replenished for perishables. But there's definitely a distinction. There are definitely people that are very much their first choice is Lowe's, and then the others their first choice is Home Depot. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, social media is one of the few places where you can really have a personality. I mean, no offense, Mark, but PPC, it can only go so far.
Hey.
But it's true, and one of the things is that you can be competitive against other companies in your industry, but your personality is going to communicate to a certain kind of person, and that can be reaching out and connecting with people who match who can actually meet the price point that you want to have, or maybe there's a difference in quality, or why do people shop at Kohl's versus Macy's? Why do people buy Hurley versus Rip Curl? It's because there's something that communicates to you, and it might be the people that they hire, it could be the models that you see on the waves, and you're just me personally, I think I'm a surfer, and I see girls wearing a certain bathing suit, and I'm like, I could totally rock that. And then there's something else that maybe I don't really like too much, and that's me. And maybe somebody else feels differently, but I think that maybe you're competing, but showing that personality is where you're going to build that trust and loyalty. So, it's
very complicated, right? It's very complicated. Too many people think of social media as it's just another marketing channel. It's just, I need to take what I'm pushing out on my website, on my blog, and my emails, and I need to just share it with social media, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right? but that's not going to be effective. And if you do that, your audience will see through that, and your audience will start to diminish, and they'll start to stray. When you think about effective social media strategy, you have to start by thinking, well, where do my customers spend their time? So Snapchat's not going to be for every brand. For example, B2B companies, Snapchat is probably not going to be the best place for them. Yep. LinkedIn would be the best. For a consumer product like surfboards, LinkedIn's probably not going to do much of anything, but Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat would be phenomenal for them, most likely, right? So know your audience. That's kind of step one. Know your audience. Pick the platforms that align with your audience. Don't get into an overkill situation where you're trying to be on every single social media platform.
Yeah, don't be so.
It doesn't make sense, right? And it's okay to be on less and fine tune it, get into a momentum of procedure, and then decide to add on more. And if that doesn't work, that test doesn't work, then you can take it away and you can go back to your core. Know your audience and know the content that they like, and know the content style of the platform. So things are going to have to be dramatically different for Facebook versus LinkedIn versus Twitter. Twitter, you have short bursts, a little bit of text and an image. Facebook, you have much more space. LinkedIn, because of the professional nature of the audience, they're going to want more statistical, hard data type information.
Yeah, and there's no point in working on a network where your audience isn't, is just going back to, the surfing lifestyle. We're, a lot of them are not on LinkedIn. They're on Instagram, as you were saying. They're on Facebook. But you don't want to. You want to have a presence in places, but yeah, you definitely don't want to waste time. I think that social can be used for different things. I think that showing the internal employees and showing their experience working for the company is one thing, but then showing the consumer side and then using another network for maybe showing industry news. And that there are certain networks that work and certain networks that don't. Maybe your brand is very visual and that's what people connect to, or maybe it's something where you're showing data and statistics. Those people are going to be on different places.
So the good thing about social media is that, as with any other digital marketing channel, there's data around it, right? There's data that surrounds your activity on social media. You can see what's most important to us is what we call engagement. We look at the percentage of activity that our posts get in relation to one another. So then we can determine, well, are images outperforming text? Is video outperforming images? Is this type of content working better than this type of content?
And is it meeting your goal?
Yeah. And so if our goal is to just drive awareness or engagement or a very specific action like filling out a contact form. So that's what we have to take into account as to what is helping us achieve that goal. But we can then use this data to determine what's working. And then we can say, okay, this is working, this isn't working. Let's trim down what's not working, let's beef up what is working, and let's see what other tangents we can take that effective content on, so that we can expand our reach with that basis, right? Yeah. So it happens all the time where we start off with a new engagement and we have this idea of what's going to work based on our research, based on what their competitors are doing and what we see, right? We don't just leap in without doing any kind of background work, but we can quickly determine if our hypothesis holds true. And the data will tell us if we need to course correct. And, that's definitely happened in a lot of cases where, we thought that one channel was going to work in reaching a specific segment of the audience, but we see it's reaching a totally different segment and we have to change up the content strategy. And so.
Yeah, and I think what's just so cool about social is that it works, across platform where, all of them work together, but then it transcends social. Maybe, we go into our back-end analytics of the website and see what's working the best. Maybe it's not just what's happening on social. It can be above and beyond engagement. And so for a lot of companies, it might not be a lead driver, but there is value, and that you can probably add a little bit more to this. How analytics can tie into social, and really kind of seeing the activity on a website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that we're going to get out of viewing the analytics from an engagement perspective is narrowing down which channels are the most effective. Not only from how are the users interacting, how much time do they spend, do they tend to hit the page and leave quickly, what do the conversion rates look like, so we can then narrow down and say, all right, these platforms are working better than these platforms, and you might be able to find one that's a complete outlier and say this isn't working, and we just have to we may just have to get rid of it. You might find small differences and then say, all right, let's look deeper at the content that we're putting out and make changes that way. Mm-hmm. So analytics are going to narrow down what's working and give you some indication as to why it's working, but you'll have to go in a little bit deeper to determine what those individual differences are. Because you can look at, let's say that a particular client, Facebook has the best engagement and the highest conversion rate. So then you're going to need to look at, within Facebook, what categories of content are performing better than the others. Mm-hmm. So to make Facebook better, you want to trim the fat and get rid of those content categories that aren't working as well as the others, bringing the overall Facebook average up, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't do that without analytics.
Yeah. Yeah, and using your analytics to know where you can, get the most traction with your ad dollars. Boosting posts is just so important. Mm-hmm. A lot of the networks is you have to pay to play, and it can be really tough to know where to spend money so that you get the best return.
We just put out a blog post today on the Mixed Digital website about organic reach on Facebook and how Facebook has significantly decreased the potential to reach your audience. So even with, let's say you have 1,000 people on your page, and typically we might see 0.5% to 1% of that audience reach without paying for it.
It's pushing negative, honestly.
So it's definitely something we're all seeing in the industry, and Facebook is doing. We feel that Facebook's doing on purpose. Now, the flip side and what the article talks about is that it's all done with an algorithm. So it's all systematic, and there are ways to trick the algorithm. You have to look at the content that you're producing. You want to share content. You want to share your other profiles or highlight your other profiles on other platforms, including your website and other social media platforms. And you've got to pay. You've got to boost some, right? You've got to pick the ones that make sense to boost because it all makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it can be tough to take that leap of faith because a lot of the time you want to use the organic side because you go, these networks are free, but you have to use your data to know where you should be spending your money, and you can't just blindly do that. And working with other people in the industry, SEO, PPC, people in creative and user experience, they're going to know what works, and that's really where you're going to know what's working. And just throwing messaging out and not knowing what people engage with.
You've got to have a strategy, and there are some networks like Instagram and Twitter that play off of hashtags that you can really get a good amount of reach on the organic side without even paying. And the fact that, like, for Twitter, for example, you can directly speak to individuals, retweet their content, and get on their radar and get into other people's streams, which gives you an increased amount of visibility. So there are definitely ways that on sites like Twitter you can get that organic reach without having to pay for it. Yep. But okay, final thoughts.
Well, we're awesome, and you should let us take over your social. No, it's really true. It's really true that it's way above and beyond just putting out messaging, and there's just a lot more to it. And the only way you're really going to do that is doing your research and knowing where you want to be, what's working, how to speak, and how to be an influencer, and ultimately add value that that people are looking for. They're actively looking for it. And if you're just shouting out your message, you don't know if it's really going to be well received by your audience. So
I would say my final thought is twofold. One, be authentic. People can see through, I don't know if this is the word, inauthenticity. They can see through the fake, right?
Be a human.
So people that are constantly reposting other people, brands that are constantly reposting other people's content, they see through that. They see that as just a ploy to get that increased visibility, to get that activity. You need to create your own content. You need to create your own content from a writing standpoint and from a visual standpoint. It's incredibly important to do the visual because visual catches the eye on every platform. So that's something that we always recommend. Get photography, get videography, get it your own, your company with your logos, with your people, and do that. The other thing is, don't discount the importance of having a dedicated resource for social media. You don't want to assign the office manager who's answering phones all day social media tasks because they're friendly. That doesn't mean anything, right? You want to, ideally you're hiring an individual to manage your social media and they're dedicated to that. And they're running the whole operation for social to get the content, to write the content, to manage your photographer, manage your videographer, manage your relationship with agencies that you have. So on the one side, you're either hiring in-house and you're getting a dedicated person, or you're hiring an agency to outsource it and make it easier. If you're, like we said before, you're busy running your business and you don't have anyone on staff who is experienced in social media, then don't half-ass it. That's really what it comes down to. You can hire an expert to bring them in-house and pay them the salary, or you can leverage the expertise of an agency and get a team of people working on your, working on your social media. Typically with us, you have the director, I act in support, and then we have a graphic designer, right? So you have a team of 3 in most of our engagements. You do the numbers yourself and add up what that would cost if you were to hire individuals to do those jobs.
Yeah.
So that's really the the 2 things that I have to say as the final thought. Be authentic and take it seriously by hiring a dedicated resource.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk all day about this, but there is no one size fits all. It's just a matter of finding out goals, finding out the audience, and having the right people to do it. It's that New York in me. I'm like, go, go, go.
It's easier for us to type and correct than it is for us to speak. Yeah. No, but thank you. Thank you for watching. Definitely, if you liked what you saw, hit the like button, share it, leave us a comment. If there's something you want us to talk about in the future, we do these videos all the time, and we're always looking for topics to talk about. So if you have some ideas, please share them. And check us out on our social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. We have other videos on YouTube. My Mixed on the Move series is pretty cool. Yeah. So check that out. And
hashtag results delivered.
Hashtag results delivered.
Yes, that's our hashtag because that's what we do.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And have a great day.
Later, guys.